It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Steffi Haynes. And today we're going to talk a little bit about UFC 303, and we're going to talk about Power Slap because this week is International Fight Week. And even though Conor McGregor didn't headline UFC 303, we still have International Fight Week going on. But first, let's check in with John and see how he's been doing.
Oh, spectacular. I'm ready to. I went out to a fireworks display the other night, so I missed the event, actually, the UFC cards. And I missed Bam, his Estrada fight, but I got to inhale a lot of fireworks smoke, so I'm doing great.
Oh my, I can only imagine. Yeah,
my lungs are, and as everybody knows, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people probably know I have bad lungs from just a genetic defect I have. So this is, oh boy, it's doing wonders for me right now.
Oh man, I feel bad for you.
I love the sympathy. Everybody
I do feel bad for you.
That's good. I love it.
I always feel bad for you when you're having a rough lung day.
I was not exaggerating. I love sympathy. Give it accolades, sympathy, pity, all that stuff. I love it.
Give him all of your good thoughts that pertain to him. Give them all over there. But for right now, we're gonna drift away from good thoughts for a moment. We're gonna look at UFC 303, which was absolutely ravaged. Even in the middle of the event, it was still getting slaughtered when the co-main event ended up falling through because Brian Ortega fell off the card. But since you were not able to watch, I cannot help you because I only watched 2 fights.
Yeah.
I couldn't be bothered.
I saw on Twitter some of it though. I saw some on Twitter. The reactions were big. The Dan EJ thing was so big. I noticed that.
Yeah. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about the gate, because the gate was the 4th largest in history. So why was it so damn big after McGregor left? And is it possible for the Sphere show to be the biggest one in all of UFC history?
Well, I mean, the answer why it was the biggest is because they sold so many tickets for McGregor. As Fred Garvin was mapping out the prices, Dana said it's going to do over 20 million, set the record for the gate before. But Fred Garvin's analysis was it was going to do well over 30 million. It was priced at least for well over 30 million. There's, because of UFC 300, where the gate wasn't as big as how it was priced, there's some question what the UFC does with all their tickets, but it should have. It seems very likely it would have gone over 30 million with McGregor, right? And then he got cut. So now we know why they were very likely. I shouldn't say we know for sure because we weren't there, but we can kind of guess why they were so hesitant to announce the fight was off, at least until they had a replacement fight in place, because they wanted to retain as many of those ticket buyers as possible to keep that gate. Now, the main event, Yuri and Alex are great fighters. Alex Pereira is going to be a superstar. He's on his way. But there's no way in hell that fight would have sold close to 16.9 million, I think the final was, right? Was it 16.9 or 15.9? In that ballpark, around 16 million. No way this fight would have sold that much by itself. And so, it was a lot of the people that bought tickets to the McGregor fight versus Chandler. They decided to not ask for a refund, probably because they had plans already. They're like, well, I might as well go. So the UFC was able to preserve millions of dollars by delaying the announcement that McGregor was off the fight. And that kind of shows you the star power of McGregor, that even a fight that he was eliminated from is the 4th largest gate in UFC history. Now, the Sphere show, could it be the biggest? I think it's very possible, but the big reasons are the fights that would have done even bigger selling, the biggest selling fights in UFC history, have both fallen through. McGregor Chandler would have done well over 30 million. And the pricing for Jones Stipe originally in New York was well over 20 million as well, approaching 30 million before that got replaced, and they still had a massive gate. So I do think the Sphere show could beat all the record holders they have, including McGregor's 17.7 million in New York. But the big reason it'll be the number one, I think, is because the two shows, the Jones fight and the Chandler McGregor fight that would have done astronomical numbers, both fell through.
Do you think that Conor McGregor will make it to the Sphere show?
No. They even hinted at it. My understanding that Dana White said McGregor won't be coming back until at least October, and probably not even then. So I might be mistaken, but that was my understanding. He said something like that. Okay. So that would eliminate him from the Sphere show, unless maybe he's going to show up and wave at people.
When I, of course, went out to poke fun at everyone by posting my very, very patented Conor McGregor is never fighting again, I had a couple of people reply to me that he was holding out for the Sphere show, that he really wanted to get on the Sphere show. Now, I searched high and low looking for comments from him, and I could not find any. But I did not listen to a lot of the audio interviews. I was trying to find it in headlines or in an article, and I couldn't find that. And I'm wondering if maybe you have heard anything like that.
None. All I know is, and I just see it, now I see the story, Dana White hinted that Conor McGregor will return in November at the earliest. And that doesn't even sound like they're committed to that date. So I have not seen any story of him talking about coming. I mean, he always says, I'm ready to fight at a moment's notice. I kind of, listen, Conor McGregor might want to fight, but that doesn't mean he's going to fight.
That's right.
And I don't think, I'm not the type like, oh, he's a coward, he's never going to fight again. I just think, and here's the other thing, if he's made all the money they say he's made, why is he even thinking of fighting?
Well, if you pay attention to Conor, he says it's because he needs more yachts.
I don't, yeah, that doesn't, I mean.
And a Bugatti.
It's okay, it's understandable he's got massive amount of money coming to him, but I don't know. It doesn't quite add up to me, because he's got to know, and I don't know if he's that delusional or what. He's got to know that he cannot compete at the highest level anymore. At least he should take a step back and kind of rebuild, gauge where he really is in real life.
Do you think it's maybe that he understands that his star power and his sponsor earning power comes from fighting, and that he has to go through the motions? Do you think that might have something to do with it?
No, because I don't think, fighters, he makes some money from sponsorship, but fighters, he has his proper 12. He still has a piece of that, and he has some deal with them where he probably gets paid to, represent the brand. But fighters generally, he's not making what other athletes make in sponsorship. Those athletes in other sports can make massive amounts in sponsorship. Fighters generally don't. Although Anthony Joshua, his reports, his filings show that he makes a lot when he fights in Saudi Arabia. So I don't know where that money, what that's for, what sponsors he's getting, but his sponsorship money skyrockets when he's fighting in Saudi Arabia. So maybe Conor's thinking of that, but normally I wouldn't think it's due to the sponsorship. Maybe he does feel that because he still owns a piece of Proper 12, that he needs to be out there fighting because that's what, propels the brand. But I don't know. I thought he sold most of his shares. You think he'd be happy with what he's got? Well,
he does have the forged Irish stout that he's been pushing a lot. And he has a restaurant. He has a piece of bare knuckle. I don't know what else he has, but I keep going back to you telling me last week that Canelo had an empire to protect. And I keep thinking to myself, does Conor actually have an empire? And not to protect, but more to bolster, to beef up by going around and making all these fights that now it seems like maybe he's not going to fight anymore. I'm sticking to my guns on this. I really do believe that he's not going to fight again.
Yeah.
But when we compare these clear apples and oranges between Canelo and Conor, does Conor have an empire?
I mean, he kind of does. He's built up a bunch of businesses. I don't think he has the amount of real estate and entities that Canelo's into, because Canelo's into just a wide swath of stuff in Mexico, especially. But he does, you talk about, he has the restaurant, he has the beer, he has the remains of the whiskey, he does his sponsorship, bare knuckle boxing. So he does have a footprint on a lot of stuff. I mean, the most obvious thing is he's trying to finish his contract because he only has 2 fights left, and he keeps talking about wanting to go into boxing. But even then, it's like, is it worth having 2 UFC fights? You're going to get hurt. I mean, and we still have to ask, what happened to his sunset clause?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other question. So I don't know. I would, if I was him, take your settlement payment when that comes and heal up and go ride your yacht.
Dana was asked last night about co-promotion. He was asked specifically about Ngannou versus Jones. And for once, he didn't blow it off. He made it sound like it could be possible with Turki Al Sheikh's involvement. Now, I want to know if you think that can happen. And if so, can you provide us with a little scenario how it might go down?
Well, I just think it's amazing that the UFC's, we know it's so broken that the Sheik had to come in, Turkey had to come in to fix it, as Dana White likes to say about boxing. No, I would normally say there's no chance. No, UFC never co-promotes. But I do think there's a possibility because the Saudis are willing to throw so much money down, and the UFC is so interested in keeping them happy that they can keep making that money from them, right? But the question is, how would it happen in a way that the UFC would permit it? Because I do not imagine they would permit a fight where the PFL got co-branding, right? So fortunately, there's, the one thing people miss is, I think Ngannou is supposed to fight this fall, right? He's going to come back, fight his first PFL fight. I don't think it's been announced yet, but everybody says he's training for boxing. My understanding is he's actually training for an MMA fight. He's going to be back he's planning to fight in PFL this fall, sometime late fall, I guess. So if that happens, he's got 1 fight, and my understanding too is he has a 2-fight deal with PFL. So that would leave only 1 fight left he'd have to get done to no longer be attached to PFL, right? So that's one possibility that Dana White's thinking ahead. Like when he finishes his PFL contract, we can make an offer, make a deal with him and Turkey for this fight. The other possibility is just take a page from boxing. Often boxing promoters will lend out their athlete to another promoter. That promoter does the event, but their boxer takes part in it. In exchange, sometimes the promoter that lent their athlete out gets a percentage of what that fighter makes. So I could see that happening where the Turkey puts up a huge amount of money in Saudi Arabia. The UFC negotiates the deal with Ngannou. And the PFL, because they need money, they let Ngannou go, and maybe they get some branding instead of co-promotion. They get branding on the event, and they take it because they see we do not have to pay Ngannou's salary for this fight. We get a piece of the pie, and so we get some money out of this, more than we're making on all the events we lose money on, and we get our name out there. So if he wins, we profit publicly with it somehow, right? I could see something like that happen. The thing that might derail it, I would think, is if you look at what Ngannou's contract is with PFL, and we've talked about it several times, and you look at what John Jones is supposedly getting, that I don't know if John Jones would accept the fight when he realizes Ngannou is going to make multiples of him. Mm-hmm. That's where I think the fight could get derailed. So if the UFC has to pay him what his PFL contract is, then not only is he getting like a high, almost 8 figures guarantee, he gets a piece of the gate, he gets double digits on pay-per-view, dollars per pay-per-view buy, he gets his own sponsorship, he just gets multiple things that if they let him have that or compensate him for giving up, he's still going to make, tens of millions of dollars for an event versus Jones. So that would be the one thing I think could really derail it even more than the UFC saying no.
So we sort of have a little tiny bit of precedent for your last scenario there, because didn't they loan Chuck Liddell out to Pride way back when.
They did say they'd never do it again. I think the most likely example might be the deal they supposedly offered Fedor Emelianenko.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when they said we won't co-promote, but we'll let you wear the branding of M1? And, and Fedor was like, well, you kind of missed the boat. And supposedly one of the big hurdles was UFC had a bunch of contractual provisions where he would have been trapped in the UFC if he won his fights. That was the part that ended it. But if the UFC is willing to make Ngannou an offer where he's no longer permanently trapped in the UFC, if he wins, like a long-term contract, a one-off fight, and the PFL might sign off, like I said, if they got like a normal boxing deal is that, your fighter, you let your fighter go fight with another promotion, but you get 20% of what your fighter makes because you're basically saying we are letting you take bids from other people. And if you get a better bid, you go fight there. We just want 20% back for everything we put into you. Ngannou's a big star. He might even be able to wheel that down less. But you think about it from PFL's point of view, they don't have to put up any money. They don't lose money like they do on their millions they would lose on an Ngannou fight. They would actually make money. And they would get their brand name out there. So I could see something like that. And the UFC side, it's like we are not co-promoting with PFL. Although there is a risk if Ngannou then knocked out Jones. But from UFC's point of view, it's like it still doesn't hurt us because Ngannou's only got one fight. Still would only have one fight left with the PFL, or that could be his last fight. And he has no opponents from the UFC to go over there. So we would still be, we'd still be the best offer in town and on the MMA front.
All right. So let's move from that into Power Slap. To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Okay, the face!